What's up, everybody? This is LA Knight, and I am back again with the Taylor Swift 1989 book tag, created by Reviews from a Bookworm. I really liked the 1989 album. I actually really like Taylor Swift's music for the most part anyway, but I really liked the 1989 album. And I did the Taylor Swift tag, the original Taylor Swift tag, ages ago, but never actually uploaded it. And so I was like, you know what, I should maybe do that again. But then when I was looking for those questions again, I ran into this one. So I'm going to do this one instead because I really like this album. So, question number 1. A book with LGBT plus themes. I actually have 2 answers for this. One book that I just finished recently, and then another book that I'm currently reading. The book that I'm currently reading, it's called Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon, I think, McGuire. The main character is asexual, and a friend of hers, I think he might end up being her boyfriend, is transgendered. And actually, his transness actually has a really big impact on his backstory, because the book is about kids who go through magical portals into different magical worlds and then end up back in the regular mundane world and are having like serious trouble adjusting. And this boy, when he was little and hadn't come to grips with the fact that he was actually a boy, everyone thought he was a girl. He went to this flower fairy-esque type world where the flower queen was going to make him the princess, but first he had to kill the evil goblin king who was causing all this trouble for the flower fairies. And so she was trained to be like a warrior maiden of the flower fairies and stuff like that. And then in the final fight, he kills the goblin king, and with his dying breath, the goblin king makes this boy his heir, and he's the new goblin prince. And that's when the flower fairy queen realized, oh shoot, this kid is actually a boy, not a girl. And so they chucked him out. And I'm like, that's terrible. But it's really interesting. I thought that was kind of interesting because this book really explores how it feels, or how it would feel if if you did go to a magical world that was like your soul home and then, got chucked back out, in all the different ways that could happen. It's a really interesting book, and I need to hurry up and finish it. And then Star-Crossed is this cute middle grade book about this girl named Maddie who is, she's cast in the role of Romeo in her school's production of Romeo and Juliet, and ends up falling in love with the girl who's cast as Juliet, but she didn't realize that she was bisexual until she got a crush on this girl. And so it's her coming to grips with her, her sexual orientation. And actually one of her friends kind of says it, makes a definitive statement about the fact that Maddie likes girls. And Maddie's like, no, okay, I need you to be quiet about this. It's really interesting how it's handled, Maddie coming out to people, to her friends, and to her family. And it was sweet. It was a sweet book, and I really like it. Some of the songs in the album have more than one question. So question 2. A book that hit you right in the feels but was totally worth it. That's got to be Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I got to the end and I almost threw it across the room because I kind of wanted to die when it was over, because of the whole thing where Akiva, the male lead, tells Karu, his love interest, oh, by the way, because I thought he killed you, I killed your dad. Also, I wiped out almost all of your people. My bad. Sorry. And she's like, bitch! And then she leaves him. And that if she'd stuck around him for more than another 30 seconds, she probably would have killed him. And that's the end of the book. And their love story is such a huge part of the plot up until that point. And their love is so intense and has weathered so much. And I'm like, oh, no! It's like they finally find each other, and then that shit goes down. And I'm just like, ouch. And then, and the second book was agony to read, although not for the same reason. But the third book, by the end of the third book, I'm like, yep, it was worth it. I mean, this is 10 million pages and 50 million words, but totally worth it. Question number 3. 'Cause darling, I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream. So it's gonna be forever, or it's gonna go down in flames. You can tell me when it's over. a book that you hated, but you loved the cover. Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. I actually haven't even read it. I read some excerpts and I read some reviews with a lot of excerpts in them because I don't normally follow reviews unless, or I don't normally pay attention to what reviews say, unless there's a lot of excerpts. And even then, sometimes people can be wrong because that happened with the book Fiendish by Brina Jovanoff. I read a lot of reviews and so I wasn't going to read it, but then I was like, you know what, I love Brina Jovanoff, so I'm going to do it anyway. And then it turned out that this one review that I read that actually quoted a lot of things from the book totally, took everything out of context, and the reviewer was actually lying about what was going on in the book, and I was so pissed. I was like, I am never listening to this person again ever. So Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. The cover is beautiful, and the one that I saw at Barnes and Noble was so pretty that I thought briefly about buying it anyway just to look at it. And that was before I knew about all the controversy and all the racism in it and all the cultural appropriation. So if I'd known about that then, that thought would have never crossed my mind, but I didn't know about it at the time. I just knew that the book wasn't very well written. But it is very pretty. Your latest book, boyfriend/girlfriend. I gotta go with Agil or Klein from Sword Art Online by Reki Kawahara, because Klein is really funny and he's really brave. He's a little bit desperate to stop being single, which would possibly get annoying, but he's really kind and brave and smart. He's very smart, and he's good at games, and he's not a sexist pig, which is nice, especially in a gamer. And Agil, same thing as Klein, all those things, kind and smart, but he's also super hot, and he's super tall, and in Sword Art Online, he wields a double axe, and I'm just like, yum. Question number 5. A timeless classic that you love. I have a hard time choosing between my timeless classics. A Little Princess isn't exactly timeless. It's my favorite classic, but it's not timeless. So normally I pick Anne of Green Gables. And I say that Anne of Green Gables is timeless because although the events are obviously dated, you can take the story and adapt it to almost any time. And I know that for a fact, actually, because somebody wrote a modernization of Anne of Green Gables called Anna of California, where Anna is a Mexican orphan who ends up working on this California farm for a foster program, like a foster work education program. And there's things in it that I'm going to actually do a review of it eventually. There's things in it that I didn't like that I thought jarred very badly with the original Anne of Green Gables storyline, but a lot of it I loved. And so I think Anne of Green Gables is very timeless. And I think now also with this whole push against girls being into science, like a lot of people are pushing for girls to be interested in science, which is then highlighting how many people are saying that girls shouldn't be into science. A Girl of the Limberlost by Jean Stratton Porter. It's about a girl who paid her way through high school. This is back when you had to pay for high school, back in the 19-teens, who paid her way through high school and college by being a naturalist and studying the insects and plant life of the Limberlost swamp near where she lived. And if I remember right, the Limberlost actually doesn't exist anymore because it was basically taken apart when it was cut through for lumber. So this book, which was written at the time that this was like conservation of the Limberlost was talked about and people were trying to get it saved, this book is one of the few books that has survived in popularity. There's even a movie based on this book, and it's actually one in like a series of 4 about the Limberlost that talks about the plants and animals that live there. And I think that's kind of cool. A book which had vivid world building. I'm going to go with, actually I have a few answers for this. Daughter of Smoke and Bone has incredibly interesting world building. The history of Erats is interesting. The magic system is interesting. The magic system is really interesting, and that was one of the things that I loved about the book, and I still remember it. And I remember being totally blown away when I understood how the magic system worked and where the teeth fit in and all of that stuff. Also, Daughter of the Blood by Anne Bishop. That was my first exposure to non-traditional fantasy settings. I read it when I was 10 or 11. My grandma showed it to me. She's like, I think you'd like this. She actually hadn't read it herself, but she read the back and was like, oh, I think this is something that she would like. So then she showed it to me. And that's really interesting because it takes traditional themes and elements of high fantasy books and flips them on their head. So, in traditional fantasy, white is good, black is bad, darkness is bad, daytime is good, and men have all the power, and witches are bad, and blah, 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 and demons are bad, and zombies are bad, and vampires are bad, and whatever. And in Daughter of the Blood, vampires are good guys, demons are good guys, zombies are good guys, witches are good guys, black is good, white is bad, the darker your magic, the stronger you are, but not the eviler you are. And actually, the darkest magic, the people who wield the darkest magic tend to be good guys, actually, and I think that's really cool. And then Green Rider, because I just remember it being very vivid, and although it is very derivative in a lot of ways, that's by Kristen Britton, by the way, it is derivative in a lot of ways. There are some things that I thought were really unique, but also the writing style of the first book really sucked me in a way that a lot of traditional high fantasy doesn't do. High adult fantasy, I should say. Young adult high fantasy actually is really good about being written in styles that are really immersive, but adult fantasy not so much. And then A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab, aka Victoria Schwab. I can't remember which one name is printed on the cover of the book. It changes depending on what series she's putting out. But A Darker Shade of Magic, the magic system and the world that the main characters live in is very vivid and and I think that's because it's very grounded in reality. And I know Victoria Schwab has been to London many times and knows the history of London very well, and I think that really helped. There's 30 questions in this tag. This is going to take forever. Question number 7. A book where things weren't exactly how they seemed. That would be Splintered by A.G. Howard, which is a retelling / sequel to Alice in Wonderland, and it's really good, but there's some really problematic stuff in it regarding mental health, or really more the treatment of mental health versus actual mental health. But I really enjoyed it anyway, and I would recommend it to people, but pointing out that there are things in it that are not good. And that book was one of the books that kept me guessing the whole time. That's actually very hard for writers to do, because I'm really good at calling plots most of the time. Question number 8. The book you were eagerly anticipated, but ended up being disappointed by. That's gotta be frickin' Dance of the Red Death by Bethany Griffin. Because I loved Mask of the Red Death, which is based on the, similarly titled Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. I really like Edgar Allan Poe. I really like the Mask of the Red Death, even though, rocks fall, everybody dies. But Bethany Griffin's Mask of the Red Death was a really interesting post-apocalyptic, dystopian, steampunk version of the story, but dealt with rebels and disease and zombie plague, well, not really zombie plague, but plague. And it was really interesting, and I really liked it, and it was twisty and cool. And then I was so excited, but it took me forever to get around to reading the second book, just because I knew it was going to be a duology, and I don't like things to end. And so I was so I put it off forever and ever and ever. But then I finally read the second book, and I was like, are you kidding me? Literally everything that I didn't want to happen in this book happened. I was so upset. The guy that she got with the guy I didn't want her to get with, the characters who survived were people I didn't want them to live, the people who died were the people I didn't want them to die, the things that I wanted to get resolved didn't get resolved, the things that did get resolved while necessary to the plot were not the things that I was most invested in. I was super, super pissed off at the end of this book, and I'm like, if there was a third book, I would be okay with it ending the way it does, but there isn't. And I was so upset.